Hello, everyone. We had a hurricane here in Florida in 1926, something that has now in history been called the Great Miami Hurricane. And I think many people don't realize, but many economists have theorized this, that hurricane helped lead us into the Great Depression. The 1926 Miami hurricane was a Category 4 storm that made landfall Coral Gables area. That's why the University of Miami Hurricanes are called the Hurricanes, by the way, it's because of that storm. But adjusted for inflation, it is still the costliest storm in American history, although it could be outdone by Helene. The 1926 Miami Hurricane didn't just usher in a Great Depression, potentially, for the world, but it created the final nail in Florida's coffin as the Florida land bubble of the early 1920s was going bust. And we have seen repeated warnings about Florida and inhabitability with storms. Between 1960 and 1965, we had a number of storms. Category 3, Category 4 hurricanes that hit the state, Donna, Betsy, Cleo, Dora, that were significant storms. Obviously, we had Andrew in 92. We had the 2004 and 2005 hurricane seasons. But recently, Florida has become completely obsessed with unlimited growth. Growth management laws are terrible in this state now, which they weren't in the 1980s, when we had an ability to absorb more people, and we had an orderly way with concurrency and other things, local laws encouraged by the state, and quite frankly, the unwillingness to mitigate climate change from the state level. And the unwillingness to mitigate climate change isn't just an unwillingness. It has become an ideological thing for the party in power, who's been in power in this state since 1999. So I don't like these things to be partisan, but there's only one party you can blame for this. They've had complete control of state government since 1999 with an exception of an 8-month period after Charlie Crist left the Republican Party, where he was a lame duck governor and governed. At that point, he was an independent, but was governing like a Democrat. But of course, he still had huge Republican majorities in the legislature, in the House and the Senate to contend with. All he could do was veto bills, which he did. But we have not, since Crist was governor, made climate change and sea level rise a serious thing in terms of state policy. And more importantly, we continue to build in vulnerable areas. This peninsula, I'm taking the areas west of the Swanee River out of it, which, by the way, might be the place people have to move. Might have to move to Tallahassee. Might have to move although they get hit by hurricanes in West Florida, but they seem to be they're less vulnerable in terms of some of these other factors. This peninsula between the St. Johns River Basin, if you want to call it that, and the Everglades, and all the springs we have, and the aquifer, plus the coastal features, was not designed to have more than 5 to 7 million people. Instead, we have about 20 million people now on the peninsula, in peninsular Florida. We have about 20 million people. And we keep building in vulnerable areas. We keep building along the coastline. We keep building and rebuilding, right after every storm, rebuilding. So since 2016, since Matthew kind of brushed the coast, we've had Irma. Well, we had Hermine. We had Irma. We had Michael. We had the near pass from Dorian in 2019. We had 2020, Isaias, the near pass. We had Sally. We had Eta. That's just to 2020. 21, we had a few storms. 22, we obviously had Ian. 23, we obviously had Idalia. 24, we've obviously now had Debbie. So we've had 2 once-in-a-100-year events in a month or a month and a half between Debbie and Helene. All sympathy for everybody who's caught in this horrible storm, whether you're in the Big Bend region, whether you're in Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Charlotte, Lee, Manatee, Sarasota, they got it bad. Other parts of the state too, right? Even on the East Coast, as we've detailed on the Florida Squeeze. But tough decisions have to be made because Florida's economy is built on two factors. One is tourism. Two is development. So our citrus industry isn't doing as well. 2024, bit of a bounce back year, but still nowhere near where we were even in the 1940s in that industry right now. We're just, we cut down so many orange groves. There are various factors for this, right? And this is an unfortunate thing from my perspective as someone who considers himself a traditional Floridian. We haven't developed a manufacturing or industrial base in this state. We have a service-based economy, but I think that service-based economy is fueled by stuffing people into coastal areas, stuffing people into the Miami-Fort Lauderdale metropolitan area, stuffing people into the Tampa-St. Petersburg metropolitan area, which, as we described last week with Ryan Ray, is not a place that should have 3.1 million people. If you think about the kind of geographic features of it, stuffing people into the Orlando area. Orlando is built on a swamp. Okay, floods very easily and is very vulnerable to tropical systems, as we've seen. Stuffing people in the Jacksonville area, which might be, maybe that's a little more of an inhabitable place. I'm going to leave you on this note. The very last conversation I had with the great Bob Graham, the late great Bob Graham, at the Graham Center a few years back. I was on the dais with him for a program, and Senator Graham told me, Senator Graham told me the greatest threat to Florida's future is sea level rise. That was in 2017, I believe, and since 2017, I've just listed the storms that have hit us. Bigger storm surges, larger storms. Yes, the 1935 Key Storm was a Category 5. Yes, Andrew was a Category 5. Yes, the 1926 Great Miami Hurricane was a Category 4. Yes, the 1928 Okeechobee Storm was a Category 4. Great Fort Lauderdale Hurricane of 47, which, by the way, that 1947 Fort Lauderdale Hurricane is when we really started messing with things in this state. Because of the flooding caused by that hurricane, the Army Corps of Engineers came into South and Central Florida and started creating canals and for flood control, channelizing the Kissimmee River, which screwed up everything in the Everglades, among other things that they screwed up in the Everglades. The Kissimmee River being channelized was catastrophic for the ecosystem. But we've had strong hurricanes before, is my point, but we haven't quite had hurricanes of the size. And this cycle really began with Wilma in 2005. The size of Wilma, the sheer size of Wilma, puts it actually on the hurricane intensity scale, something that was developed more recently, which doesn't just look at wind speed, but looks at central pressure, but looks at some other factors, size of storm, storm surge, all of that stuff. Puts it above Andrew, actually. Irma also above Andrew on that scale. Hurricane Michael was kind of like an older storm, like one of these Cat 5s from the past, wasn't very big. But Ian was a big storm. And now Hermine, the biggest storm of all. The most epic storm of all. All sympathy to those of you, those who are in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, even the lower Midwest impacted by the storm. Our hearts go out to you. But my concern and our concern here at the Florida Squeeze is Florida. And in the wake of this hurricane, we have to think about Florida's livability. Is it livable? Will it be livable in the future? And I'm increasingly thinking, if you're on the peninsula, good luck. We're going to see what happens to real estate soon. We're going to see what happens to insurance soon. We're going to see what happens in terms of new development and financing of new development soon. I predict we will have a downturn on all of this. And you have a legislature and a governor who are unwilling to deal with it. And it's not just because of ideology. It's because of the special interest groups that have run rampant in this state since 1999. Some of them were running rampant before when the Democrats were in control. It's gotten worse, much worse since 99. And they're not going to do anything about it. It's as simple as that. They're not going to do anything about it.